Hello everyone, welcome back to ROBOTBOY, and today we are reacting to another Star Citizen video. Today we're looking at the CitizenCon 2954 video, which CitizenCon, this one was 2014, the actual real life year, and we're looking at a video called Brave New Worlds. We've been looking at quite a few of the developer CitizenCon direct videos, all of those breaking down behind the scenes, the future of Star Citizen, how it's going to look. We've looked at what 1.0 is going to look like. We've looked at a bit more in depth from Genesis, and in the next week or so we'll also be looking at base building 2. So yeah, there's a lot coming up, a lot we still haven't even dove into properly, but yeah, today we're going to be looking at Brave New Worlds. The first half we're going to be doing it in 2 parts because this presentation is quite long. It's about an hour and 20 minutes, and I'm probably going to pause and talk a bit here and there, and I don't want this turning into like a 2-hour long video. So we're going to do it in 2 parts. We'll do the first half, and then the second half will be out later in the week, or it's probably already out. Well, not probably, it could be out by the time you're watching this. So yeah, part 1 and part 2, Brave New Worlds. And I think they're talking about basically, this is basically looking at, I think, yeah, like just the world building of Star Citizen. I think they're going to touch on Genesis here too. It's kind of more of an in-depth presentation, but this is from a few years ago at this point. It's from about 1.5 to 2 years ago. So obviously we've had more information on Genesis in that time, but it'd be interesting to see a really in-depth presentation. I'm also going to be watching this video at 1.1 speed, just because, again, it's quite long, and I feel like it's a nice balance between just like it taking forever, but not being too fast, that it's just brain rot super speed. I put a video of GTA on top for you to watch to keep your attention. It's, yeah. You might have already watched this video already and you're just here to see my reaction, in which case, awesome, thanks so much. Or you're watching this for the first time like me, in which case, let's see what we got in store. Lastly, before we get into it, if you're new to the channel, which most people are, and you're not subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button. That would really help us out. I do want to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. That would be just crazy. Become a channel member if you want early access to videos like this as well. And with that, let's just get into it, shall we? Okay, Brave New Worlds. Begin. We're going to watch up to the end of chapter 2, I think, or phase 2. Sorry.
Guten Tag, CitizenCon! Hola, CitizenCon! Ni hao, CitizenCon! And hello, Manchester. I'm not going to need this anymore. Cool. I am Benoit Beauséjour, or as some of you know me, I am Balt on Spectrum. Today, we will talk about Brave New Worlds. This is Pyro 2, Monox. It's a barren planet, not really habitable. Now, since the advance of our planet tech, we've always allowed players to
It's crazy. I will be pausing, by the way, because people get annoyed when I talk over stuff. Just looking at this shot, like this looks like a shot from a movie. This looks like a fully final rendered CGI shot from a movie, and it's just running in real time in the game. Like it's just, I forget that sometimes. Stunning. We are going back to Monox in an upcoming gameplay video too, or that video might already be out. Either way, yeah, we're going back to Pyro for sure.
Navigate planets and move from orbit to ground seamlessly. Explore complex areas in intricate detail. Now with server meshing, we're going to need a lot more locations for missions and destinations for more life. But there's a major question that has always followed this project since the beginning of Alpha 3.0. How are we going to make a large number of planets and systems? How are we going to meet the fidelity benchmark we've established? In this technology update, we bring life to lifelessness, even to Monox. We take the physical representation of the terrain, the geology, the atmosphere, the climate, and the environment to create.
So again, this is from a few years ago, so some of what they're talking about might already be in the game, and some of it might still be on the horizon. Based on that Genesis video we reacted to a few weeks ago, there is obviously still a lot more to come. So yeah, basically I'm not yeah, we'll see how much of it is in the game already, and some of this might be, I guess, old news.
Accurate biomes that spring naturally from the collision of all these environments. Coherent, denser biomes that follow the laws of nature that we encode into data. Data that we then leverage to place flora and fauna, yes, but also settlements, buildings, alien and human life in a planetary context. This creates worlds that are scientifically plausible, richer in gameplay opportunities. We want you to find adventure just by going around the planet without a quantum point. We want you to find actions along your path. For this, we are changing how we made the game. We are scaling how we make the game in all areas. This is not just a Planet Tech update. This is a collection of systems that we call...
Ooh, okay, so this is...
Genesis.
Okay, so this is the reveal of Genesis, I guess, basically.
To help me explain all this nice work and this nice technology, let us kick us off.
Which I guess technically hasn't been added to the game properly yet, so maybe most of this stuff will be... hasn't been added to the game yet, will be added soon. Will be new. And
I welcome our very own Ali Brown and Will Hine for Phase 1 of Genesis.
Phase 1. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how along in these phases we currently are. I love this dude. This dude's great. I love him. Yeah, all of the behind-the-scenes videos, tech presentations I've seen, he's great. What's his name? Will?
Hello, Star Citizen.
Yes, hello, CitizenCon.
Yeah. So let's start with some introductions. This guy over here is Will Hine, aka Water Guy or River Guy.
What? No.
And this lovely gentleman is Ali Brown.
I said water guy as he said water guy.
Pusher of pixels extraordinaire.
And we're here to tell you about Phase 1 of Genesis, which we're entitling The Laws of Nature. And this revolves around the fundamental approach we use to build our planet and is the literal foundation for everything else we're going to talk about in this talk today. Now, it centers on data-driven, physically based rules that we aim to realistically emulate nature and its incredible diversity. Before we dive in a bit deeper, let's just recap on some of the things we already have on our planet. So here you can see our lovely atmosphere and our cloud rendering, which can provide some spectacular views. We have our on-the-fly terrain generation, which is no loading screens in our game, which we're very proud of. And then we have our scattering system that can populate these planets with many different diverse biomes.
Oh man, I feel like, bless him, I feel like he's, you can tell he's a bit nervous and he's rambling through this quite quickly, but he's doing a really good job.
And we've been setting quality benchmarks for each of these biomes as we come across them one by one.
But what we have isn't perfect. This scene on Microtech, it looks great, but it's not getting the same density that you'd expect from a real pine forest. That's one of the things we want to solve. The other, if I take you to the other side of Microtech, you'd be excused if you thought we'd just turned around and looked at a different part of the forest. Why is that? Well, this is because currently our artists create slices of biomes in great number, and then they distribute. I'm a visual effects artist and filmmaker, but I've also got into game development recently as well. My first game came out last year. I'm working on another one at the moment. I find all of this stuff really fascinating. It's really cool to see behind the scenes look at how the technology is being used, how they're optimizing it. Them across the planet using humidity and temperature properties. Each slice looks great in isolation, as you've seen, as you've explored. But this is not the solution to give us varied and natural biomes across an entire planet. Additionally, just using humidity and temperature limits us to only...
I also just realized that it might sound like that they're speaking quickly because I put it on 1.1 speed. Maybe they're not actually rambling that quickly. So, yeah, I will give them the benefit of the doubt on that one. Maybe they are speaking perfectly calmly and I've just put them on like super speed.
2 degrees of variation. And that's not enough.
Apologies, guys.
That we want to create.
Apologies for accusing you.
So how are we going to scale up our planet generation? Well, as I said before, we're going to start with physically based rules that drive everything. We want nothing to feel random on these planets. And we want no limitations on the number of biomes. We want infinite biomes that are continuously changing across the planets. And we want extreme density, and we want to maintain or exceed all of the quality levels we've set with our existing biomes. And most importantly, we want it to be scalable so that we can really scale up to the level of content that the designers are expecting. And from your perspective, we want you to be able to truly explore and find unique playing opportunities everywhere on our planets. So to start this, we're going to need more data. So if we see here some of our existing data sets on our planets, we have temperature, which we define locally and globally, and humidity, and that's it for now. With Genesis, we add many other data sets, such as the geology type, the soil type, and then we also go for things like the soil depth and the quality and the nutrients and many other properties all drive this complex data set that we use to build rule sets on that each individual asset can describe how it should work with them.
We're going to put something together and show you some demos today using some of the assets that you've already know and love in the PU. Although you might see some new stuff later, we'll save that.
Hell yeah, let's build
What you're going to see is a vertical slice of development. It's very early stages, very work in progress, you might see some bugs, but that means it's only going to get better, so be excited.
Yeah, bear in mind, this is from about a year and a half ago. And so that tech is already 18 plus months. What we're about to see is 18 plus months ahead, plus that Genesis video we saw last year, and it's already getting so much better, so...
The number one challenge with planets in our game is scale. In no other context do you need a planet to look great from first-person perspective when you're stood among the trees. You need it to look great when you're in a spaceship at a quantum marker miles away, and everywhere in between. There are no loading screens, you see everything. We cannot afford for it to look bad in any of those scenarios. So, let's start.
Looking at you, Starfield. That's all I'm going to say.
From a ground perspective, demo number one, let's have a look.
So I'm not sure. So this is phase one, so I'm not 100% sure if this is in the game right now. It might not be. It's hard to say, because I would have started playing after this video came out, so it could have been added before I started playing. Hard to say. Hard to say. Is this phase one of Genesis in the game already? I don't know. Let me know. I mean, it looks, to my eye, it looks better than what we currently have.
So, how do we make that?
That initial example he showed looks more like what I remember seeing when we went there in the live stream a few weeks ago. So, yeah, maybe what they're showing here is still to come.
Thank you, thank you. So, let's talk about first what's underneath it all. The ground! So, in our previous terrain shader, we just switched between different ground textures depending on climate and didn't really consider the unique properties of each type. Now, the terrain shader is based around 4 layers. We always first consider bedrock at the bottom of it all. Then, where appropriate, we add layers of soil of different types. We then add debris where appropriate, whether it be pine needles, dead leaves, etc. And then when it gets cold, we add snow. Each of these layers has unique shading properties and unique transitions between them. Because we do this all in one shader, we're able to achieve that as well as being performant. We can also use things like water saturation to darken and tint the soil and other properties to make it look more realistic. But that's not what filled most of the screen in that demo. That's the vegetation. Like what Ali said, we want to emulate the laws of nature. So in Genesis, we have rule sets for every asset that tells it how to respond to our rich data, whether it be...
And they've only improved this in that demo they did last year to show off Nick's one. It's just like crazy.
Soil type, water availability, temperature, geology, or whatever. We assess the viability and the vitality of each asset and compare them to decide what is likely to spawn in a natural environment. This automatically creates the cohesive environments that you saw in that clip. Not handcrafted anymore. No one has told those ferns and those pines to be like that. They each want to be like that. And that's what we're doing, multiple assets coming together to create a unique microbiome. What about trees then? Same thing. They have a larger requirement for space. They have a larger requirement for nutrients. That's how you see the distribution, and it's how it all works. Let's meet the flora that came together to beat that forest, to make that forest, and have a look at some of their properties. Now, just to note, they are all going to look quite similar because we've already seen them in the same place, so they must be similar. So, building blocks, like grass.
No, I feel like, no, we're on 1. I might bring this down to like 1.05. I feel like they are speaking quickly anyway, so...
Common grass, medium amounts of sunlight. We had ferns, see it's a much lower
I don't want it to be too fast.
Sunlight. We had salix bushes forming our undergrowth, and we had pines, of course, and multiple variations of pines.
I like whoever is controlling the
competition.
slideshow.
Everything has ideal conditions. which affects its competitiveness. We also have additional control over this in the form of dominance, which allows us to make one asset more competitive and more dominant than another, which is just what we see in nature. Everything is constantly fighting for resources and, of course, light. Because we spawn these assets in a hierarchy, it's easy to propagate shade data down over the distribution of the assets so that we can control ones that prefer or reject shade. Often, like these ferns, they can spawn in light, but they are outcompeted in those scenarios most of the time. So you will see a rogue fern, or a place where there's no seeds for a specific asset, you might start to get this coming in. Let's take a look from a larger perspective again.
I mean, it does just feel more dense and thick overall, so I'm leaning towards saying this version of it is still not in the game yet. Unless my PC settings are just terrible and everything's... It can't run this level of density. Maybe. I don't know. It's amazing how far it's come in that new demo, like compared to this. Because again, this still looks great, but when you see that Nix 1 demo they did last year, it's just come so far. It's weird to kind of look back in time at it. And I bet even back then this was even more impressive then, and now it's even outdated already.
So to take you through some of the things we saw in that clip, let's talk about rocks first. So anyone that's done a lot of ground driving and ground vehicles might have seen that our rocks sometimes feel a little bit randomly scattered, and it can be quite an obstacle sometimes. So in this clip, you saw that the rocks are no longer randomly scattered, and they're now placed based on physically based rule sets. And this logical grouping is achieved via erosion simulations, which we run offline to build localized data maps. And they describe the size of the aggregate and rocks and the density and where they should naturally form. And that means we get things like these natural clusters of boulders at the forest edge underneath the cliffside. And on that note, you might have noticed that the cliffs have been dramatically improved in how they shade. We also see things like the natural clumping of vegetation caused by seed dispersal. This is controlled per species, so we can get better emulation of their unique growth patterns and create a much more realistic environment. And we also calculate the slope aspect, which is the exposure to vegetation to solar radiation and other environmental factors. And this allows us different species to flourish in different conditions, as we can see on different sides of this valley. Then over larger scale, we calculate the age and vitality of each tree individually to drive exactly how high they should be, but also the color of their leaves. Now, this isn't the only thing that will drive the color of the leaves. We're going to introduce the concept of seasons to the game. And this will mean our planets will evolve through the year, and we'll be able to shed leaves from trees and have the grass wither in winter.
Nice. That's really cool. I wonder if that will be in real time with our actual calendar year, and it will update through the game, or if it's within the game, the like timeline within the game, if that makes sense, versus the actual real world month that we're in. Will they adjust it? That would be interesting. Yeah, as I say, it's interesting to see.
So as you're starting to see, all these rules, all this data, it's all coming together to create what we call truly emergent biomes. Let's have one more look at how this varies over a much larger scale.
Oh yeah, okay, this is not... I'm pretty confident in saying this is not in the game yet. Microtech does not look quite like this yet, even though it looks great. I think I even pointed out on a live stream when we were flying over it that, yeah, just... They could do some work, and clearly they're going to retrofit this system, well, as well as putting it into the new planets they're making in terms of Nix. This will be coming back to the existing planets, Stanton and Pyro as well. It'll be so cool once base building with like we saw in the 1.0 video, and you can start claiming land and stuff, and all of this will have a sort of purpose. You can just fly around, look around, and be like, I really like this bit up in the valley with the mountain view, with the sea or the lake over there, and be like, yeah, this is my home. So I know that's a complaint some people have at the moment. It's like the Star Citizen is just like empty and there's nothing going on outside of the POIs, but there will be I mean, I personally enjoy that aspect of it. I enjoy there being a sense of scale and randomness and nothingness to a planet, but it will be even better when you have a reason to go out and define, this is my bit of land.
Just like in real life. Oh, thank you. Just like in real life, our areas should vary, even by traveling a few kilometers. If you get in a helicopter and fly over the Alps, it all looks a bit snowy, but when you look closer, it's constantly changing. And we're now able to accurately represent that with our changing data. Another very important factor to mention is the distant look. In this screenshot, you don't see a single tree, and yet the terrain is still green. We previously did that with artist-made lookup tables that told the planet what color to be at what position. But that wasn't going to work with all our new data and our far more complex spawning. Now we have a systemic solution. The planet shader is able to intelligently evaluate what's going to spawn there using the same rule sets that cause the assets to spawn there when you get there. That means we can sample the sort of color that is going to project onto the orbital view and use it. We get a far better accuracy.
Yeah, we've got a bit more in-depth on this on that recent Genesis video too. Again, it's just cool how far it's come already since this.
A continuously varying planet that sets the scene for the incredible exploration gameplay I know you guys are going to have. But how have we done this without compromising on performance?
So yeah, with all this new data sets and these physically based spawning rules, you're probably wondering, how is this going to handle in your CPU? We don't want to melt anyone's CPU, so we've redesigned all of this tech to work much more efficiently than before, and now it can run on many cores. This allows it to be run perfectly well on both the CPU and the GPU. So we've redesigned our framework so that we can run it at both and swap between them freely. Now, the benefit of this is we can do things like, first off, move the terrain system to the GPU, and we've now done that to get some incredible performance improvements, but we then also cache the results in something we call a virtual terrain texture. I'll just give you a quick demo of this now. This is now vastly faster than the previous system, but it also allows us to generate the terrain in much higher resolution, which means all the popping you can see on the mountains as we're approaching, all of that should be completely eliminated on the right-hand side of the screen.
Using my eyes. I mean, yeah. Oh, there you go. That was a pretty obvious one. I mean, yeah.
With the extra headroom we've gained by making our terrain system more efficient, we've been able to introduce some improvements, including high-resolution ground textures, proper blending between surface types, and, of course, better tiling. If you're familiar with any of our planets, we've taken off all the assets so you can see the issue. And now how it looks, you don't see those lines going at all.
Nice. That's always an artist's biggest nightmare. There you go.
And one more.
Yeah.
With the terrain data cached on the GPU, like Ali said, we can perform the scattering there too, which is significantly faster. All those algorithms that we've used to generate those first bits can run there without being more expensive on your CPU. And it also means the results are directly there on the GPU. We can render straight from them. That allows us to have dramatically more density in our new system. We can render objects directly without having to go via the CPU every frame. We also cull at different levels of granularity, with bigger groups in the distance and individual assets up close. Just as a demonstration, this is the sort of density you can expect on Microtech today.
Yeah, I feel like that's what I see.
You can expect from the new upcoming tech.
Okay, yeah. All right. Okay, I don't think it's in the game yet.
We're going to turn
I think I would have noticed.
So you can see, these are the groups that we create of those trees and of the terrain. And as we get closer, we shrink them so we're more intelligently rendering what we need without having to assess each tree individually, all the way down to the ground.
Oh, yeah, nice. Phase one.
So to recap some of the things you've seen here in phase one, we had data-driven rules based on physically based data, generating emergent biomes that continuously vary across our planets to get infinite possibilities. And we've achieved this with much greater density than before and much faster rendering. And we also achieved seamless transitions from ground to space with zero popping. So now that we've got all this tech, It's time to talk about how art might make use of this. So for that, I'll hand you to the next phase towards Sebastian Schroeder.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. No physical.
Thank you. Wow. Thank God there's only 20 of you, otherwise I'd be nervous. Right, thanks for having me. I'm here on behalf of the Planet Content team, and we're very excited to finally show...
Do they... Because the last CitizenCon was virtual only. Are they... Is that like a thing they're doing now permanently, or is that just a one-off year thing? Might look into going to one if it is in person.
you some of the things we've been working on. As you've just seen from Will and Ali, the system keeps growing in both complexity and capability, so our libraries have to grow alongside it. Wait, should I click? No. No, I should click.
Click, click.
Oh, there we go. So, our goal with the content is to provide the content that the system needs to populate every corner of every planet with realistic environments. And this content is what this phase of Genesis is all about, emergent biomes. For our first example of today, it's almost a shame Will left because it's about moisture, but let's look at very high moisture and medium to high temperature.
This guy looks like German Giovanni Ribisi. We got the swamps, so this must be the first time swamps were ever revealed, I imagine, maybe? Yeah, again, we've seen a bit more of this, and this is coming to Nix 1 this year, which is very exciting. But yeah, imagine seeing this a few years ago. How exciting that would be. And again, it's got even better. It's got even better since this. Nice. So this is probably Nix 1. I know it's just a demo. I know they're just demoing it, but I imagine it's like what has become Nix 1 basically. It's fine, just lift it out. Use the force. It's been done before. Yeah, nice. I can't believe we're going to be here within the next 6 months or so.
Thanks, that did look really good. So, for swarms, we obviously made vegetation that feels at home in or near water. But before we dive in, allow me to give you a quick primer on our approach to authoring plants. Most species can survive in a fairly wide range of climate conditions, but will only thrive if the conditions are ideal. To support this concept, we author our vegetation assets to describe the full growth cycle of a species. If the conditions aren't ideal, they may not grow to full maturity or look their best, but the species can still exist. So let's have a closer look. For the water's edge, we made plants like this Alternatera and the iris. We also need the aquatic ones to float on the water surface, like the water lily or the pickerel weed. This willow and the one after, a Chinese tallow tree, while comfortable near water, we can also use to replace some of the more aged assets used to seeing elsewhere in the game. The last one, it's taking a bit longer now, but the last one, I'm gonna wait. The last one, you may not see used much in other biomes, but it's a very iconic one for the swamp, the bald cypress.
Yeah, cool. Cool. So many people there.
So another
Crazy.
feature we need to make a swamp experience a proper one is water injection. Over the last year or two, a lot of work has gone into improving the way our water reacts and renders. So naturally, we wanted to make a biome that highlights those advances. Let's have a brief look at what it's like being inside the swamp. As you walk or swim through the water, you may come across obstacles like logs or debris floating on the surface. They will react to the player character and can be pushed out of the way.
Nice. Damn, you gotta imagine that's happening on a planetary scale as well. Just
We were also
crazy.
pleasantly surprised when we first saw how the water simulation systemically affects assets floating on the water surface, making for some really immersive moments.
Sick. Is there swimming in the game though yet? Because I tried swimming in a video recently and
Now, before I get to our second use case of the day, a quick disclaimer. Obviously, all the things you're seeing here today we're still actively working on, but this one in particular, it's a bit early in the process. So let's have a look at extreme object density next. With the data saying we should have high rainfall and sunlight year-round, it's the perfect condition for our next biome to appear.
jungles. Yeah. Oh, look at that shot. Oh, that's so good. Oh, that's... Man. I can't wait to land on a planet that's this dense. Oh my god. This is in-game, guys. This is running in-game. Just... Again, just going down to that micro detail, how small your character is compared to everything. I wonder what would happen if you set your settings to low. It's like one tree. Again, this is from years ago. Imagine what it's going to look like when it's finally out. And the jungle biome is not even coming to Nyx, I don't think. So this will be in one of the other systems, either Castro or Terra. So they'll have even more time to develop all of this. Oh, look at that.
Considering everything you've just seen is still very much work in progress, the gameplay capture team really did a great job showing our work in the best possible light.
Yeah.
With jungles, we want to explore the concept of vertical stratification.
Get me on the gameplay capture team.
As they are prime example for that. What it means is that you have
I'd love that.
horizontal layers of microbiomes defined by the species that thrives with the amount of sunlight and rain that still reaches there. The floor, herb and brush layer, we could almost do before, obviously missing the density. But now we also have the option to add variation to the tree layer by dynamically spawning epiphytes like lianas, orchids, or bromeliads, attached to trunks and canopies of other assets.
Nice.
With this and improved density is what will finally allow us to make convincing jungles. And the best part is, we don't even need a lot of different species to create what we refer to as a canvas of a biome. The idea being that we can vary what kind of forest you're in by adding or replacing the plants that visually stand out the most.
Yeah,
now,
that's cool. Didn't think of that.
To get us started on our stratification, we made epiphytes like the Epiprenum and the bromeliad, including a potted version for your hab. Then obviously you need jungles for lianas for a jungle.
So you're basically creating individual assets, and then it's the driving the assets, not just spawning assets procedurally in areas, but driving the procedural generation of assets on top of other assets too, to create even more distinct biomes and microbiomes within themselves. That's the bit that's really, really cool.
Character to the herb and tree layer. For tall trees, we decided on a fairly generic rubber tree, as its different growth stages serve as a nice foundation for all height levels. And that's pretty much it, what we need to make a pretty good base for jungle.
Nice.
Now, for our third and last use case, let's pretend the data indicates regular rainfall and moderate temperatures. This climate would support a lot of different forests, but we also wanted to use this opportunity to explore extreme scale. And they're just really cool.
Ooh, nice. Man, they're really... This would be my favorite one to explore. They're really diversifying the types of forests and stuff. I mean, look, that just looks so good. If you were to just freeze frame that, it would look like a photo. Nice. Very, very nice. just need an Ewok jumping out of a tree and yeah. Look at that! It really gets me excited. From a tech standpoint, but also just as obviously as a game, you know, just to see this, be able to, I can go there and walk around at some point. It's very, very exciting. Then cut to the guy with the Star Wars t-shirt on.
Now, for this one, we first looked at the different redwood biomes on Earth and tried to analyze what the most defining species of them are. With this understanding, we then decided on the following plants to allow for a fairly universal redwood forest that will easily support variation across continents and planets. A fairly common family of species for the ground levels of all redwoods are ferns, in our case a sword fern. We also made a huckleberry variant to provide some visual density for the shrub layer. To add some Jurassic vibes, we made tree ferns, as they can be found in New Zealand's redwood forests. The most important one, though,
cool.
obviously
Some palm trees
sequoias,
too.
and they ended up being one of our most complex sets yet. As it turns out, they can grow to be fairly ridiculous in size. It keeps going.
Wow. I'd love to see one of those trees in real life. I've only ever seen them by playing games, and whenever I've seen them in a game, I've always thought that they're ridiculous't oversized, and maybe it's because it's a game, but yeah, I mean, I think they are just that massive, crazy. One day I'll see it.
Now, one thing our game's foliage is sorely missing is the ability to properly react to what's happening around it. The goal here is to unify all forces from all sources. Sorry for the horrible rhyme. All forces from all sources. Wind, characters and creatures, ships, explosions, and whatever else, and have the vegetation behave accordingly. Now, as part of our tech improvements, we will be implementing a GPU-based simulation that's fit for our game scale. For now, we've set up the ferns with our existing CPU-based
just
one
being in
to better
almost
visualize
darkness,
what it feels like to
dense
walk
it
amongst
is.
those giants. Also, with the biomes on our planets now being defined by where an individual object wants to appear, you can expect a lot more happy accidents by having species invade different biomes, making for some unique locations, hopefully.
I feel like the only game really I've played that has this level of density and like actual darkness within the forest because of how dense they are is Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora, and that is also a proprietary engine that they built themselves for that. So it's cool to see that coming, that sort of level of density that I can recognize from that game, and the feeling you get from that, like the feeling of being lost in a woods or a jungle or a forest that's that dense in a game, is very cool.
Surely. Now, before I get to disappear off stage, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody involved, especially my team in Frankfurt for doing such amazing work and being all around great people. And also to all of you guys. I really hope you have a fantastic CitizenCon. This concludes this phase of Genesis, so please welcome Ian to the stage so I can tell you all about the next one.
Thank you very much. So that was phase 2. Okay, we're still in phase 2, but it's going to be a...
Thank you.
Talking about something
Hello,
else.
CitizenCon.
I like this guy's style. Very cool.
All right. Those new planets and biomes were pretty, right? But it's time from phase 3 civilization to give you some stuff to do. So, let's talk about location density. We've emulated nature as well as we can to make sure our planets are physically based and realistic, and our biomes are emergent. But it's time to start populating the verse, because where there's people, there are their lives and the structures they build. So it makes sense that whenever you go and explore these planets, that you find their lives. And what's even more important is that when we make these structures, that they use and they follow the same rules as our biomes, such as the jungles and the swamps. But before we continue, let's first take stock as to where we are now. At the moment in the verse, we have these custom, beautifully made locations, such as Ghost Hollow, we've got our distribution centers, or even just some outposts. And these have all been handcrafted by our designers and artists to hit that benchmark. And they've been working directly on the planet. However, going forward, this doesn't really scale with how we want to go forward with the game.
Server meshing is about to arrive, and we're going to have a way higher player count. So those 73 bunkers across Stanton just won't cut it. But in general, it's also pretty barren. There's not much for you to explore and find stuff out there. So there's no exploration gameplay. You haven't really put your character to use for the way that you should. So this means we need to go bigger, which means we need to change our workflow. And with any workflow, means we need to first establish a new benchmark. So with our new benchmark, we are ensuring quality and improve on our previous work and make it even better. And any location that you'll find needs to have its own unique personality and no repetition. We don't want you to find the same location twice. This also means that this is your exploration and your finding.
So applying that same procedural tech to the man-made structures as well as the natural environments too. Basically sounds like the summary of what the point is here.
So when you go out there and explore with your Carrack or with your Corsair, is that whatever you find, you can share with your orcs or with your friends.
What about my Zeus?
As for that density, if you fly down to the planet, we want you to find something, let's say, every 100 clicks. But also improve the mission experience. So when you stay more on the planet, you're more immersed and you go from location to location. Just keep going. So going forward, we are modularizing all our existing locations and assets. And we're basically making a library of buildings and layouts that we'll be using to no longer work directly on the planet. The neat thing, all these modules and assets can be iterated upon and tested right in the editor for all the designers and artists to ensure fun gameplay and interactive sandbox activity, and also make sure all the mission stuff is there. Basically, we're building a toolkit. So let's look at some of the things that we need to keep in mind as we are making that toolkit. First and foremost, we've got our art style and branding. We've got things like Frontier for our settlements. We've got high-tech for the emergency shelters, but also utilitarian, like our bunkers and distribution centers. The richer the data, the richer these locations will be. Secondly, they all have a function. We've got mining for our mining outposts, farming for the farmsteads, or just places where people live. The function of the place will define the way the place looks as well, and its form. And last but not least, the people as well, the faction and their loadouts. We've got lawful people, like the new Citizens for Prosperity in Pyro, unlawful, such as Xenofred, and sometimes not even no one. And the place needs to look a bit, derelict. In different places, you'll find different people. So, now that we've made our toolkit, and we've defined all this new stuff, let's start building thousands of locations. Yes, I said thousands.
Okay.
So, to avoid the same issue of working on directly in the planet, I'd like to introduce to you Starchitect.
Nice.
What Starchitect allows us to do is directly on a planetary scale scatter all these new libraries and modules and assets and no longer work directly on the planet. And it uses the same logical rule set as our emergent biomes. And it also gives us full control over the data that we set on these locations. So expect locations in places where they make sense. Let's kind of look at all this new Genesis data and all these new libraries and chuck it into Starchitect and see what it gives us.
Go on then.
As you can see, we're now able to make full-size locations, and they will look completely different based on where you'd find them. The layouts are controlled by the rules, and it will reflect its place in the verse.
Because I think long term, they want to. I think you guys have told me in the comments, and I might be wrong, but I think the goal is you've got these 5 systems already in place to come out, the star systems, but their goal is to keep expanding on that beyond that with Genesis, to be able to basically keep spitting out planets very quickly, because all of their procedural systems will just be so seamless that you can produce an environment on a planet super easily with all the data, and then populate that planet with all of these POIs without having to have someone. You just have to design the assets, but once you've designed the assets, then the planet itself will basically work itself.
We've got farms, mining outposts, but even our older locations, such as the bunkers that you found on Stanton.
Yeah, cool. I imagine they won't be this close, like all the way around the planet. There's like a billion things all close to each other. But yeah, I get the point of the video that there will be more POIs more frequently. But not so frequently that it's unrealistic. Especially with base building coming to, you don't want to overdo it.
So, let's look at an example and kind of use the tool to really, make a location. We can define the rules, as I've mentioned a couple times by now. So for our mining outpost, it wants to be near a resource. We can specify what this resource needs to be. But we can also give it suggestions where sometimes you'd find it here and sometimes you wouldn't. If the location has refineries, it might want to be near water to refine the resources. Then secondly, we can define what buildings should be there. So obviously we need mining buildings, houses for people to live as well, and even power buildings that we can leverage with the resource network. Starchitect will intelligently figure out where to place these and what needs to be at the location. Next up, farms. Its rules, well, temperature. Not every plant can live in every temperature, but the same with soil type. Only certain plants can be in certain grounds. And then we can query the seed map to determine what plants you would find there. What are the harvestables? As for the targets, again, farm buildings, obviously, power buildings, houses, but even animals, such as our beloved quasi-grazers. And last but not least, derelict ships. We've got these all over the place currently. Rules, well, they'd be close to anti-air because they would be shut down. But even in harsh flight conditions, such as mountains or low visibility, you'd probably most commonly find them. Targets, well, crash ship parts, of course. Sometimes you'd find the full remains of a javelin, and the other time you might just find the nose of a starfare laying around. So, let's talk about coherency. Sure, we can scatter all these locations everywhere on the planet, and you'll find them in places that make sense, but we can do better. You don't just want to find an outpost completely on its own, right? We want to make sure it really feels like people have built their lives here. So, let's talk about some missing bits. We want to tell tighter stories, such as the people's lives, but also logical exploration. If I find one thing, I expect to find something similar or something else nearby. We also need more data control. What defines one mining outpost being different from the other ones, aside from the harvestables? And also give the narrative developments. Make sure people build near rivers, on mountains. They build near town halls. They build near distribution centers. So to hit that bit of our benchmark, we make sure that locations are near each other and group them together. The effect it gives is a fully developed landscape with vistas and points of interest all over. And we group them together in what we like to call a cluster, like this one, that has 13 locations.
Fine. Okay, so they are close-ish together, but I imagine those clusters also aren't like
Let's talk about
rammed
clusters.
together.
Clustering means generating locations near other locations. So, for example, if you find a distribution center, just like in the verse currently, I would find forward operating bases next to them. But if you go even further out, you'd find mining outposts to funnel those resources to the FOBs.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Go out even further, you'd find caves around them, because that's where they might find some of the gems. And then we can even specify the data on a cluster level. All of the factions that live at this whole cluster, any mining outpost, that would be the same people, but also what commodities they sell, to find on what resource you'd find. So let's look at an example of the clusters. We have our mining cluster. Again, we can define what rules we should have. Rules, well, near a resource, just like our mining outpost, but also it needs to be on a lawful planet. We can target on a planetary scale where they would need to be. They need protection. As for the targets, well, caves, mining outposts, but even trade posts. Let's go to the other side of the spectrum. Before I do so, I forgot data. We can, on the cluster level, specify, again, what mineral commodities, but also what harvestable types you'd find are in that region.
Okay.
Now let's look at the other side of the spectrum, an unlawful cluster. What rules? Well, they need to be far away from any other cluster, because they want to be isolated and do their evil deeds on their own.
That makes sense.
And also on an unlawful planet, such as somewhere in the Pyros system. For the targets, outlaw outposts, crash ships, because they would shoot them down, and also ruins from just places they just completely overrun. The data on this one, You'd find specific loadouts, and they'll be using weapons that you wouldn't find in any other legal system. And these weapons will be sold at the shops in these regions. So, now that we have a cluster, let's go even bigger. Just like our locations, we can put clusters near other clusters, and we group them together, ranging between 10 to 15 locations each. And we group this into what we call a sector.
Okay.
Like this one, that has about 120 locations.
Nice. And then,
however,
yeah, there you go.
on a planetary scale, we can define how many sectors we should have, with each their own data and persona.
I mean, that's
and
it. That's how
one of
you,
these locations
build a
is
universe.
now ready for the mission system to hook up and give you gameplay, and for you to find a bunch of places on your own. And just on this side of the planet, can you guess the number? We've got about 3,042 locations.
I mean, yeah, cool. That's just one planet.
And again, this means as Starchitect, we're just able to, on a planetary scale, just define how many locations we need, what you'd find there, and to just give that full identity.
Mad.
Thank you for listening.
Cool.
And I won't just see you in the verse, but I'll see you in a denser verse.
All right, cool. We're going to call this video here. That's part 1 of the Brave New Worlds video. Thanks so much for watching. Part 2, again, as I say, is coming out in a few days, or potentially already even out. So make sure you check that out as well. This has been amazing. I can't believe 45 minutes just flew by like that. So yeah, I'm excited. And I think it's going to get even more exciting as we go through, because this is just phase 2. We've got phase 3, 4, 5, and 6. So yeah, we're not even halfway through the phases yet. Amazing. Cool. Again, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe for more content like this, become a channel member for early access to videos. With that, I'll see you in the next video.